So it's been a couple of weeks since the first episode. What have you been up to?
Not a great deal, to be honest with you, just sort of surviving January, working, doing a few nice social bits, and actually getting into bed early and reading. I think I've probably read 4 books this year so far.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
What kind of books?
A mixture, sports ones, of course.
Mm.
Bob Rotella, Golf is Not a Game of Perfect, as you
Yeah,
recommended.
that's
Phenomenal.
all right. Do you like it?
Phenomenal. Really good book. And then I'm just on The Racket by Conor Nyland, which is about what it's like to be a tennis player trying to make it to the very top, but isn't quite there.
Right.
Yeah, been interesting.
Amazing.
What about you?
Well, believe it or not, it's coming up to Cricket Mind's first birthday.
Oh, yeah, when's that?
Sometime in February. I'll have to make
Okay.
up a date, but yeah.
Okay.
So I've been tweaking the website and giving it a bit of a facelift. So that's taken a lot of my time. Been staring at a computer screen for hours on end, which isn't my idea of fun, Bryony, but it needs to be done. But I have managed to do some consultations, which I always
Nice.
enjoy. With the variety of people, the youngest being 12 and the least youngest being my age, believe it or not.
Okay.
So not so young.
Yeah.
But he's very passionate about the game, so that's good.
Yeah.
And then yesterday, I went to a Lancashire reunion, which
Oh.
comprised
players?
it comprised of a couple of players and a few of the management team from the 90s. So we had a good reminisce and also a little bit of a chuckle about the new Manchester Giants logo.
Oh.
So for those who don't know, the Manchester Originals, they've been rebranded as the Manchester Giants, and the logo is an elephant, believe it or not. Have you seen it?
I have seen it. I've seen an elephant. The elephant, yeah.
Do you like it?
It's not really my taste. But I don't know that it could have been, you know? I'm not really sure there's a design I would have loved.
Yeah, well, we probably shouldn't get into that. It's probably another podcast. But shall we get into the show?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's.
Okay, welcome to episode 2 of the Cricket Mind podcast. I'm Nathan Wood.
And I'm Briony Brock.
And it turns out, Bryony, that we did have a few listeners tune in for the first episode.
It's good.
And we've also had some questions sent in. So I think that might be a pretty good place to start.
Yeah.
So the first question is from Zane in lovely Hertfordshire. And his question is this. You talked a lot about mindset versus technique. How do I know when I actually need to work on my mindset rather than just fixing something technically? So, Bryony, what do you think?
Good question, Zane. I'd say it's a very common confusion at all levels of the game, actually. You think when we watch England play, some people are quite quick to criticise the technique. Some people are quite quick to criticise the kind of mindset side. I guess the most simple way to tell is if you can do the skill, you know, if you can do it in training, if you can do it in the nets, then it's probably not going to be a technique issue. Because a technique issue will be something that you see everywhere, from nets to drills to friendlies to high pressure games. It's going to be present across all of those. But it's when you can do a shot or you can do something, you can execute a technique, but then when you're under pressure, you suddenly can't anymore. That's when it might more likely be mindset, attention, or decision making even.
And they don't have to be exclusive, do they? It's not a case of, right, I need to work on my technique now and how I need to work on mindset. It often works best when they're kind of interrelated. I think I would say to Zane, actually, mindset work and skill work is something that you do continuously and together.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What's the next question, Bryony?
How can so this is from Mark Davis, a club coach in Solihull.
Okay.
How can coaches help players think for themselves rather than constantly telling them what to do?
Okay, so I think that relates to that ITC quote from Steve Bull, who's that former England cricket psychologist. And for those who didn't listen to episode 1, why not? First question. But ITC stands for Independent Thinking Cricketers. So how do you create ITCs? Well, I guess in simple terms, you need to try and let the player kind of work things out for themselves. So I would say that your primary job as a coach is to provide a problem to your players, and the player's job is to come up with a solution to that problem. So what would be an example? You've got a batter who's been struggling with balls pitching on a leg stump line. For me, it's the coach's job then to present that problem to the batter by delivering balls on a leg stump line. And then the key, I think, is to give that player the space and the time to develop a method for dealing with that problem. Because, and I think this is where actually it's good for coaches to put their ego away. You know, often that method that a player comes up with, you know, it can be a better way of doing it than the method or technique that you were going to suggest. Because let's be honest, the best players aren't the ones who remember instructions parrot style. The best ones are the ones who can read situations and kind of adapt to those situations in the moment. Is that fair, Brian?
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. Yeah.
Peter Moore's the Notts coach and ex-England coach. In fact, he did 2 stints with England, didn't he? But a brilliant county coach, a brilliant coach of, you know, developing players. He used to talk about coach the intention, which basically means agree with the player what they need to get better at, and then support and guide that player whilst they're trying to figure out their best way of getting better at that particular skill. I think that's a pretty good philosophy, to be honest.
Yeah. And I think you've got to, as a coach as well, try and understand what's going on in the player's head as well. It's very easy to like say, do this, do that. But I mean, they might not understand how you're saying it, or their body might not move like that, or that, you know, it's kind of got to be a bit collaborative.
100%. And it's such an individual thing. I mean, obviously there's some things which are fundamental in human movement and, you know, technique, but they're less than what a lot of people believe. And within that, you've got preferences, I mean, individual preferences.
Yeah.
I hope that's answered. Is it Mark?
Well, yeah.
Mark's question. Okay. Right. And the final question, because we've only had 3, but it's a start.
Yeah.
The final question comes from Sonia, although I don't know where Sonia is from. And her question is, even though my daughter practices regularly and prepares meticulously, she still overthinks things during games. Is this normal, and is it a problem?
Good question, Sonia. It is normal. Yeah, absolutely. But no, it's not automatically a problem. Preparing meticulously and overthinking probably come from the same place. You know, she really cares about it and wants to do really well. So it sort of makes sense that those two would go hand in hand. I wouldn't say the thinking was the problem, but more about when it maybe shows up. So it can be useful before a game to be thinking, you know, to be thinking quite carefully about things to help you prepare. Even between overs, it might be useful. But maybe it's not so useful when the bowler's running in right at you. You know, that's probably not when you want to be thinking as much. And often when we are thinking in those situations is because we're maybe a bit scared that we might fail and we kind of really want to control the outcome of the game rather than trusting ourselves and trusting our preparation. So I think in your situation, Sonia, I wouldn't be thinking about how your daughter can stop overthinking, but more how can she be supported to trust herself under pressure? Because I think if she can trust herself under those pressure situations, trust that all that meticulous preparation has been put in at the right time and in the right way, then that overthinking should naturally fall away a little bit.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thanks to Zane, Mark and Sonia for sending in those questions. Thought they were excellent.
How can people send in their questions, Nathan?
That's a very good question, Bryony. So, well, do please keep them coming in. Or you can send them in however you want, actually. So that's whether that's the website, an email, Instagram, any social platform, media platform. We're on most of them. What we'll do, Bryony, so listen, if you do want to send listeners, probably true, actually, listeners, if you do want to send in a question and need those details, we'll put them in the show notes.
Oh.
So you can find them there. Okay. So we're going to discuss resilience today, and it's something we talk about in cricket quite a lot, actually, usually after something's gone wrong, but we rarely stop and ask what resilience is. So, Bryony, when you talk about resilience in cricket, what are you going on about? What are you talking about?
Well, I think I was trying to think of metaphors to help explain it, because I think that can be useful sometimes. And I think we get all confused with strength and resilience. And I think if you think of strength as armor, so it's hard, it's tough, it's protective, it stops you getting hurt, but it's really rigid and it's not very adaptable or flexible. Whereas I see resilience as more like a kit bag. So you might have a helmet, shin pads, bits of protective equipment in there, and you can choose what you need based on the situation. So it's that sort of ability to adapt and recover and use the tools that you have to move through things. It's sort of where the armor reduces the impact. The resilience is about adapting and coping with the impact, and really just how we respond under stress over the longer term.
So that is really quite interesting, because I have this quote or this kind of these terms that I use about mental toughness, because I don't actually like the term mental toughness. I think it's a bit unhelpful for me. It kind of conjures up that armor imagery, rigidness, and when it comes to resilience, perhaps bottling up emotions and not processing these emotions. And I've known so many players who've kind of been labelled as mentally tough, and yet a significant proportion of those have had some kind of mental breakdown at some point. And if you kind of couple this with the tragic number of suicides that have happened in professional cricket over a long period of time, then I actually think that term is potentially dangerous. So I prefer a term like emotional adaptability. So I use that to compare it to trees, and in this case, mental toughness is represented by a mighty oak tree, and emotional adaptability by a weeping willow. And the way I try and explain it badly most of the time is that the oak tree, it looks tough, it looks strong, and it is both of these, but in a strong enough storm, that mighty oak, at some point, it'll break because of that rigidness. Whereas the flexible kind of willow tree, it'll bend and sway in the storm, and it'll always bounce back, no matter how strong the storm is. So very interesting. I do like that.
And they make buildings like that now, don't they? They used to make them so that they were like really solid and strong, and then when they would all fall down if there was an earthquake or something. So now they make them where they have that bit of flexibility within them, because it actually makes them able to withstand more kind of trauma.
And I guess resilience isn't pretending something hasn't affected you. It's kind of feeling it, dealing with it, moving on.
Yeah, it was pretty. It's as simple as that, really.
Okay. So in the last episode,
in
episode 1, tune in if you haven't. I think you said that we often see the appearance of strength rather than actual resilience. What did you mean by that?
So when we suppress our emotions to appear strong or tough, it can often look really calm from the outside, and we can often go, oh, they look like they're okay. It doesn't bother them. They're unfazed. They might not look upset. They might not shut down. They keep their heads down. They maybe don't get angry or withdraw. They just sort of crack on. But suppressing our emotions increases our stress overall, and it leaks out later, like you said, down the line with mental health challenges. But it also stops us being able to make decisions as effectively. You're using all your energy to hold things inside and keep them all tightly squashed, so you don't have as much energy to stay present and make those good decisions. And so I think we saw that maybe a little bit in the Ashes with the way that England, it's fine, we're fine, everything's fine. And it's like, it's okay to admit that you're really disappointed that you got a pair in your first Ashes test. Like, it's okay to admit that. And that doesn't mean you're not strong or anything like that, but it's all this, no, we can still win. We're fine. That appearance of strength that kind of undermines that adaptability that resilience provides.
Why do you think we value that kind of appearance so much? And do you think it's a cultural thing? Is it something peculiar to, England and stoicism, or what's your
Well,
thoughts
there
there?
is the whole kind of stiff upper lip thing, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
must just look okay, pretend we're fine. If someone asks how we are, yeah, I'm fine, even if you're not.
Mm,
I think there's also probably a bit of a gendered element, not biologically, but socially we ingrain that men should be tough and should be strong. And from a young age, we don't we kind of socialize them away from those core skills.
mm,
Whereas it's sort of more socially acceptable, even at 5 years old, for a girl to cry. And for boys, it's still, they don't always get the same response as if it was a girl. So I think that probably doesn't help either. But yeah, it does seem a bit like a cultural thing. I mean, I think, was it the Indian women when they won the World Cup? You definitely saw emotions and expressions of emotions, and so it could be, yeah, it could be definitely that stiff upper lip Englishness that's
mm.
not helping.
Yeah. So you mentioned, boys and girls. In your
Yeah.
experience, do you think they learn resilience differently, or is that, is it that we're just teaching them differently?
I think they kind of socialized differently. And I've seen it when I've worked in schools, a 5-year-old boy who's upset. It's more like, oh, there's more frustration from the adult potentially. I mean, these are trends. They're not sort of for everybody, not rules. And girls, there seems to be generally a little bit more sympathy when they feel emotion. I think it's sort of ironic in a way, because the skills that build resilience are the feeling, are the crying, are the processing, and girls generally they talk more about their emotions. We seek social support earlier on, and we tend to recover in relation to others. Whereas boys, again, there's that reinforced stoicism. They learn suppression as a coping strategy, or outlets, and I think the research shows that they seek help much, much later on,
Yeah.
if at all. It's when crisis is there. It's rather than an earlier stage. So again, it's a trend, not a rule, but I think it's definitely socially reinforced, which
Mm.
isn't necessarily helpful.
What's going through my mind now, as you were talking about that, was so my old boss at England Cricket, a guy called John Neal, he used to really be a big advocate of female coaches coaching in the men's game.
How interesting. Okay.
And actually, when you were talking about that, we that boys, men, they do tend to kind of bottle things up and not share. Actually, he might be onto something there, in so much
Mm,
as if you've got a female leader,
mm,
she could actually create an environment that helps with that.
mm,
Because it's an interesting one. Well, it's not an interesting one, I guess. I'll probably understand it because of the history of the game, but there's lots of male
mm,
coaches coaching
mm.
female professional
Yeah.
teams, but not
Yeah.
the other way around. But it
Honestly.
might actually work pretty well.
I
What do you
think
think?
I think it could, yeah, and I think sometimes, I mean, I'm not a man, so I don't really know it from personal experience, but it seems like men might be more comfortable speaking to women, if they see a doctor, or they're used to seeing women in caring roles. They may feel naturally more able to talk about things with them
Mm,
versus the sort of natural kind of comparison, I guess, with a man. You don't want to kind of lose face, or
mm.
that kind of thing. It could be a fear of judgment, maybe.
Do you think resilience is something you're born with, or do you think you can learn and develop it?
Oh, 100% you can learn and develop it. I think it's essentially a collection of skills. And in my head, it's kind of 5 core skills. some of us are born into environments where it is not taught to us, just like any other skill. Some of us are born in bilingual homes with one French parent, one English parent. We will be bilingual. That's lucky for us. Some of us won't, and we'll have to really grind if we want to be bilingual. And I think it's similar with something like resilience. If you're in an environment where your parents kind of naturally or consciously teach you resilience, then you will have it. But you also might not get so lucky, and you might have to reflect and learn it later on and build on those skills yourself. So I think, yeah, some of us are luckier than others, but anyone can learn it, definitely.
And how can coaches or parents tell the difference between a player who's struggling and a player
Yeah.
who's actually going through that process of learning how to recover, how to build resilience? How do they see the difference?
Well, I think it's about the recovery for me. So resilience comes the more times that we recover from discomfort or stress. The more that we feel something, we experience it, we find ways to cope, and we recover. That to me is that resilience process. If we're avoiding, if we're suppressing, if we're continually like dysregulating or stepping away or walking away or continually not recovering, then that would be a sign that they needed some help there.
Okay,
No,
so is this a fair statement that the problem isn't emotion, the problem is
no.
unprocessed
Yeah.
emotion?
Absolutely, that's the nail on the head, yeah.
Okay. And I think you said that resilience is a skill, it's not a personality trait or anything like that.
Yeah. I think it's a skill, but it's kind of a few skills together. So I would put it to kind of 5 skills. So emotional awareness, so recognizing and knowing what you're feeling in a given moment. I'm disappointed in myself. Disappointed, like it's okay.
Mm.
It's expressing it, so it's being able to say it out loud, write it down, something like that. It's recovering from it, so refocusing, breathing, routines, those sorts of things. Perspective, so zooming out a little bit and forgiving yourself for those mistakes. They're not the end of the world. And then it's support. It's knowing who to lean on and when. And for me, it's those are kind of the 5 pillars, I guess, of like your resilience kit bag. And if you're able to do those 5 things, then you'll be able to kind of adapt and recover. And it's not just cricket as well. Like that's the thing. I think that's what makes me so passionate about resilience is
Mm.
it really is. Every time you don't recover from something, whenever you're limiting your life, we're all going to have things that disappoint us or face rejection or, all the things feel out of control, and being able to adapt and bounce back and be resilient makes life so much bigger and greater.
Mm. So let's say somebody has let's stick with cricket because this is the Cricket Mind
Yeah.
podcast. But somebody has a stinker of a game.
Yeah.
Um, well, actually, let's take it over a period of games. So somebody is let's say a bowler, and
Mm.
they've got into the habit of bowling wide balls, and they've got it in their mind, and they're struggling with this.
Mm.
In terms of building resilience, is it best to kind of get back on the horse as quickly as possible, keep on the horse, or is it, should you take a bit of time out from the game and just let things settle? Where are you with that?
Well, it depends how kind of where it's coming from. If it's one game and they are like in the nets that they're fine, for example, it's not a technical concern, then I think you really want to be encouraging them they're bowling a wide, and that you want to be encouraging them to recover in the game and build through and work through it that way. I would not often encourage stepping away altogether.
Yep.
I guess it's what you think that's going to offer you. If there's a genuine technical or physical issue that you need to address, but we do see it, don't we? I mean, with some people we work with, they kind of decide to stop bowling.
Mm. Yep.
And the quickest way to not get better at bowling is probably by not bowling.
Yeah, that makes
Uh,
sense.
so yes, and that is usually stepping away is usually a fear-driven choice, and this is the thing with resilience versus kind of toughness as well. That appearance of toughness is often stepping away from things, and it can provide that relief. And when you feel relief, you think, "Oh, I must have made the right decision then,
Yep.
because I feel so much better now."
Yep.
But actually, it's sort of an illusion of relief, and in the longer term, you've just limited yourself. You just stop bowling now.
Yeah.
Next time, you're going to just quit cricket altogether.
Yep.
So it's recognizing the bigger picture as well.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. That so, if resilience is about recovery, what
Hmm.
can coaches or parents actually do to help build it?
I think so. I think with parents, with coaches, start with coaches. Like Mark's question, I think curiosity and reflection really helps. And
Mm,
again, I think it helps if coaches park their ego a little bit, because you feel like as a coach, you're needing to add value. You're needing to say, oh, your arm wasn't quite high enough, or oh, this. So you're saying to the world, oh, look, I'm a good coach. I noticed these things. I can fix them. But actually, if you're working with somebody who's dropped their form on their bowling, what feels different? Something feeling different. And then if they bowl a good ball, oh, what happened there? Like, what did you notice? What do you feel in yourself? Really encouraging them to tune into themselves as much as they can, because you're not going to be there on the field with them. They need to be able to adapt and kind of tune into themselves.
mm,
And I think also recognizing as a coach, particularly if you're a team manager or something, is just because someone is quiet doesn't mean that they are, if they get out and they're far and they're quiet, that doesn't mean they're tough. And if they get out and they cry, that doesn't mean they're weak.
mm,
So it's trying not to project those notions onto them either,
mm,
and really praising the ability to recover. The child who's got two ducks in a row and then has gone out and opened again and given it them all like that, given it their all. That ability to keep going
mm.
is the bit that you want to praise rather than the stoicism.
So, going back a while now, and I reckon it's probably, um, I don't know, 12 years ago perhaps, but Carol Dweck brought out the
Mm.
growth mindset book,
Mhm.
and ECB coach development at the time, I wasn't involved, at this moment, but I was going through the courses. They latched onto that with, telling coaches about growth mindsets and fixed mindsets. Does that still stand? Are you a fan of that? Do you want to explain to the listeners or viewers what it is, and, is there any
Yeah,
kind of
I mean,
relevance?
I'm a fan of it as like conceptually. I don't know. You're better placed probably to say how it was um like presented from the ECB perspective, because I've only read it from a research perspective. So how were they talking about it in a coaching perspective?
Well, a lot about language.
Hmm.
So, so first, the premise would be that, if you've got a fixed mindset, it basically means that you think you've got a certain amount of talent and you can't push through that. Whereas a fixed mindset, a growth mindset, is about you might not be there at the moment, but as a coach, you can help somebody kind of higher that ceiling actually by using language as not yet. I think was the
Mm,
phrase. You're
mm,
not there yet, but
mm,
you will be.
mm.
Um, they were the things. I mean, it's a long time
Yeah.
ago, and it did, but yeah, they're the things that stood out for me.
Yeah, and I would say those things still apply. Why are you putting limits on yourself? It's
Mm,
not particularly helpful. Um, but it's difficult because it's done subliminally, I think sometimes,
mm,
particularly on younger cricketers. They're a bowler, they're a batter, blah blah blah. I think maybe things are getting better, giving people more opportunities for longer. But yeah, I would agree, encouraging that sense that the sky is the limit, and if you keep trying, you're not failing, you're just trying, you're just pushing that ceiling. Because I think those fixed mindsets are ones where people do tend to be scared to fail a bit more.
mm. So, would you say it's important to almost normalise the struggle
Mm,
that players
absolutely.
go through as part of their cricketing journey, and also that journey towards becoming a better player?
Yeah, 100%. And I think coaches can do this, and actually parents as well. How your modeling of your response and your emotions teaches so much by example, especially when you're with younger, as they are younger. Admitting that you feel frustrated or disappointed, or things like, I had a friend last year he's a coach, and he got a few very low scores in a row, so opening bat. And if you're just in the training session and you just say, oh, such a bad day on Saturday, guys, I'm gutted, like, it just normalizes the frustration. You don't have to pretend that you're okay, because you care about the game. So it's completely normal and okay to be disappointed. But
Mm,
it's creating an environment where people feel okay to do that. And actually, you asked about what parents can do, and I think children spend a lot more time with their parents, so they have more potential impact. But one thing that we see, and I was speaking to a teacher about this recently, is we try and protect people's emotions and we try and soften the blow. So if someone's upset, oh, don't worry, it didn't really matter. Oh, don't worry, it's just a game. Don't be silly. There's no need to cry. Like, and all of those things just invalidate those feelings. And actually they can cause some quite long-term problems, because then that child is going, oh, but I'm really upset, but I'm being told I shouldn't be upset. Are they wrong? Am I wrong? And it's really confusing. So instead, we ideally would try again with a bit more curiosity. That looks really tough. Do you want to talk, or do you want some space? You know, is there anything that would help you right now? What do you need? You know, letting people feel the emotions that they feel rather than sort of subconsciously invalidating them by trying to make them feel okay. It's sort of, yeah, it's well intentioned. 100% you can see it's well intentioned, but it's harmful.
Absolutely. I mean, all parents want their best for their kids, don't they?
Yeah.
In no matter what they do. But I mean, from a coach's perspective, I think it's not helpful if they kind of rush to rescue all the time. You know, they don't overanalyze straight after a game. You know, they kind of let the emotions of the child settle before kind of talking about their performance. I think as maybe a simple rule that I've kind of developed over, a period of time working with parents and coaches is kind of connect first, discuss later. Is it? Are you on board with that kind of philosophy?
Yeah, and I think they matter more in the situation than you do. Understand what they're going through, what they're feeling right now. You might be desperate to tell them that they had hit the wrong shot, but I think that could probably wait.
I don't know whether this is connected actually, Bryony, but it's definitely to do with what's the phrase? So connecting self-worth to performance. Now, I don't know how this ties into resilience, but again, when we were just talking about parents and stuff, I don't know where I got this from. It might have been an ECB course. It might have been a TED talk. I don't know. But the advice was kind of, as a parent, try not to discuss performance too soon after the event, because the child can connect your emotion as a parent with their performance. So I'll give you an example. It's a personal example. You know, if I came back as a lad, after a game, and let's say I'd scored 100 on the rare occasions that I did, and I walked in and, mum and dad, who loved me very much, would obviously ask, how did you go? And I'd say, I scored 100. Scored 100. And I could see in their eyes, and I'd be like, well, that's fantastic news, brilliant. Obviously not get the champagne out, but, it was a celebratory moment. But conversely, on the times when I didn't do so well, and I came in and they'd say, how did you do? And I'd tell them, I sensed anyway that I could see a little bit of disappointment in their eyes. I don't know whether that was me or if it was true, but over a period of time, I learned to associate kind of coming back and looking forward to telling them good news about my performance, but not so good actually about telling them that I didn't do so well. Does that tie into resilience, or is that a completely different topic?
No, it does a bit, and it can be so hard, because as you say, parents just want the best for their child, and they're human as well, and chances are they're probably quite competitive and really invested, especially in a sport like cricket. But it's so hard for the child then, because if you'd have got out for a duck, you'd probably already be seriously disappointed, and then when you tell them and see their faces, it's like double disappointment, and it's really, really hard. But then you'll know as a parent, how do you park that? It sounds, from what we've talked about previously, it sounds like you've tried quite hard to park that sense of your opinion on it or whatever, but it can be so hard to do that. But it does affect their resilience, because sometimes we see players who get very angry when they get out, and that can be because they feel that their identity is threatened. And so it's sort of like a bodyguard emotion. Anger is like a bodyguard. It comes up, there's like a bit of a vulnerability there, and it comes up to fight and defend it. And it's sort of a similar thing. It's like you see yourself as this good cricketer or this competent batter, and then something happens to make you think that's not that, and then your whole identity gets rocked a little bit. And if that's happening out in the field, and then you come home and it's in your home as well, then you start to question, do they think I'm not very good either? And it all becomes really tough. And I mean, it's such a hard ask for parents, but really focusing on how the child feels. Like, did you have a nice? Because sometimes, I mean, I think I remember actually, it was last season, a guy at my club, a good friend of mine in the men's first team. I think he got 98. And I saw him at the club, and I was like, "Oh, how are you? How do you feel about Saturday or whatever?" And he was like, "Oh, I'm thrilled, like so happy." And I was like, "Okay, cool." But because it was 98, I know there's a lot of people out there that would be gutted by 98. And I've seen children cry at 98, and it's actually quite an interesting question to ask people. Would you, how would you feel if you at 98? And a number of people would say, "Oh, I don't know if I'd ever play cricket again if I got out at 98." So it's kind of trying to remain as objective as you can. How do they feel about their performance? So if they say, "Nathan, how was your game on Saturday?" And you say, "Great, I got 100." Then they go, "Oh, great. Did it feel really great? Good." Then it's sort of at least tied up a little bit with your interpretation.
Yeah.
Whereas if they say, "How did you do?" And you go, "I got out for a duck on a really bad umpire's call," then they at least can kind of relate to you in some level. Or, "I played a really bad shot." They can go, "Oh, how frustrating. How are you feeling about it now?" Or whatever. It's sort of really trying to connect with how the player interprets it, rather than projecting your own thoughts onto it.
Yeah. That is so true in so much as, I mean, there are plenty of people, aren't there, who, if you get 98, it's like, "Oh, why didn't he get 100?" And yet you probably take 98 before the start of the day.
Well, exactly.
There's also people who, you get 100 and they go, "Well, why didn't you get 150?"
Yeah.
Or, 120 not out. So,
Mm.
and I get it. The intention is trying to create, I guess, hunger, in batters. Graham Gooch used to talk about, you got to get daddy hundreds, big hundreds.
Mm.
Is that helpful or
I mean, it probably depends
not?
a bit on the level that we're talking
Yeah.
about.
Yep. Yeah.
But I think there is this sense that it's very unsatisfying, and we work with people who want to play county, and then they want to play national and professional. And there comes a time when you have to be a little bit satisfied. Be satisfied with your performance while still, striving for more. So it's quite a fine balance to tread.
It's important to enjoy the moment sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I don't think I did actually, and to my misfortune, because actually we play the game for enjoyment, don't
Yeah.
we? So, cricket can be a brutal game, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of times when it doesn't go your way, but when it does, actually, my advice to people now would be enjoy it,
Yeah.
enjoy that
Yeah.
moment, and savor it, because
Mhm.
there's going to be plenty of times when
Mhm.
you're at the other end of the spectrum. Can you think, talking about resilience just in general terms, can you think of, or do you think it's possible actually to, because you mentioned that a lot of people that we work with, they want to become professionals and they want to get to the top level. Do you think it's possible for a player to get to the top without being resilient?
Mm. I would say not on controversial, not on merit, but some of the selection choices recently do not seem necessarily based on performance. So in the traditional sense, I would say yes, to get to the very top, you surely have to be resilient.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean they won't pick a random person to come on tour who
So,
played.
so are you referring to the England selection there
Yeah, probably a little
recently?
bit. Just in
Yeah.
the sense that it's not necessarily done on, yeah, hasn't always seemed, some picks have felt like slightly left field, but
Yeah.
predominantly, yes. I think to get to the top, you've got to
Yeah.
have resilience. Yeah, there's no way otherwise. Cricket's too humbling.
Yeah. That selection thing, it's a fine balance, isn't it?
Mm.
Because Well, in the 80s and 90s, people would be given one test and then chopped because they didn't, work out in that way. So that's equally as bad. Yeah.
But actually, like you said as well, that sometimes they hang on, and then they break further down the line.
Yeah,
It
true.
leaks out later, and you hear about the struggles that they've been going through all this time.
So sometimes it's kinder actually to take
Yeah.
somebody out of the
Oh, yeah.
fire. Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about crying because you
Oh,
mentioned that
yeah.
earlier. We sometimes see a bit of tears
We
in
do,
junior
yeah.
cricket. When a young player is crying, what's
Mm.
going on there?
So, crying is more probably a lack of emotional regulation. So it's like the feeling comes more quickly than they're able to manage it. It's like a wave and they can't get out of the way. And when we, like I said kind of before, when we say things like, "Oh, stop crying, don't worry, calm down, you're overreacting," we're not teaching them to regulate. We're kind of increasing the shame and the idea of put your emotions in a box and leave them somewhere else. Instead, we want to be kind of name the emotion again and yeah, like are you disappointed that you got out? Are you frustrated? Try and understand what the actual emotion is, and then try and help with that kind of reset and build and move on from it. And shame can be particularly unhelpful, and I think that's something that you see if someone's crying, and then again, parents with the best intentions can say, if you keep crying like this, we're not going to be playing cricket anymore, or
Mm.
no one else is crying. Why can't you, go and sit with the team? It's shame. Then the shame is just one of the most, awful, awful emotions for somebody to have to sit with,
Mm.
particularly over a prolonged period. So it's sort of, if they can be taught to help regulate those, then it will get better. It will get better over time. But actually, as I say, if we suppress, if we ignore, if we invalidate, then it's going to become a real problem in the long run.
And going to the opposite end of the spectrum. Well, actually, I don't know if it's the opposite end of the spectrum actually, but I'm going towards anger now. So we've gone from
Yeah.
crying to
Yeah.
anger. Looking back,
Mm.
I would say that I tended to play at my best when I was angry.
Mhm.
What's going on there? Am I a bit peculiar in this regard?
No, I don't think that's uncommon perceived experience. Would it have been anger around? What would it have been anger around? Yourself? Anger with yourself?
No, probably somebody else.
Like your coach?
It could be I've not been in the team. I'll show him, or it could be a
Yeah.
sledge from an opposition. In
Okay.
fact, towards the end of my career, I
Mm.
actually ended up starting looking for a bit of
Mm.
confrontation to get me fired up.
Mm.
But there is a school of thought that actually you don't want to be angry because the emotion, can become a bit uncontrollable. You want to be calm.
I
Where
think
are
it
you with that?
depends on the person, and I think did you say that happened more in the back end of your career?
Well, I think I recognised it probably too late,
Mm.
actually. But looking
Mm.
back as a young boy when I got angry, I think it focused my mind and it
Yeah.
stopped me from thinking about this bowl is good or this is
Yeah.
fast or it's turning a lot. I think it just focused me in,
Mm.
actually locked me in.
Mm.
That would be
Yeah, I
my
think it can, and I think it can also for some people who kind of need the game to mean something to perform well, it
mm,
can give them that reason. Like the
mm.
Johnny Bairstow stumping run out, whatever you call it. That just gave them that extra fight that they didn't have, and I think it can be helpful in doing that. I think where it would be unhelpful is the anger after, like the smashing up the dressing room, the throwing the bats, that kind of thing that we see. Were you ever guilty of that?
No,
No.
actually. No, I never did that. I know plenty of
Mm.
players who did,
Mm.
but it wasn't my way of doing it. Once out, I
Mm.
would go and take myself off
Mm.
and sit by myself and not
Mm.
talk to anybody. Yeah, that was my way. I went quite internal actually
Mm.
afterwards, which I don't think is a healthy thing.
Well, yeah, it's all sort of different ways of trying to cope with the feelings, isn't it?
Mm. In terms of, we work with players on resilience
Mhm.
and giving him some coping mechanisms. How long? I mean, how long's a piece of string?
Yeah.
Piece of string. How long does resilience training take to show up, have an effect?
Well, it can take some time, to be honest. I wouldn't expect to
Yeah.
see much change immediately, but across the course of a season or two, you would definitely expect to see change, depending a bit on age as well and what things show up. But over time, you would hope to see somebody who's a bit more willing to face challenges, stays in the game a bit longer, seeks support, accepts feedback a little bit more, just fewer kind of emotional spikes. The more times that they recover from setbacks, the quicker you'll see the benefits of it. The more we try and cushion it, the more that who was it saying the other day? It happens quite a lot with people we work with. They sort of open the batting, and then they get a couple of ducks, and then they get moved down to 3, and they're really happy at 3 now. And again, it's like,
Yeah.
could we maybe have worked through that? The more we avoid,
Yeah.
the more we kind of negate undermining that building of resilience. But the more that we deal with the difficult stuff, which can happen quite a lot in cricket, as we know, the quicker that we can build it.
One of the things that I really enjoyed about my time with England cricket was we used to bring in experts from outside of cricket actually to talk to the cricket coaches, and we used to bring in people from the military, and they would talk about desensitization training, exposing people to uncomfortable situations, and over time they would get used to it. Is that what you were talking about before, or is it something different?
Probably a bit less intense than that.
Yeah, well,
that would be a fast track way to do it. You got 6
by
weeks.
Alsatians, or yeah.
But essentially, the more exposed you are to feeling tough things, not only does it get easier because it's more familiar, but also you're like, oh, actually, that sucks, but I can cope with it, and I can be okay, and I will be okay.
Can you go too far? Can you take somebody too much out of the comfort zone, and it actually has a detrimental effect?
Oh, definitely in the military.
But let's say a cricket context. So, I don't know, a young player struggling a bit against fast bowling, and actually the coach goes, right, okay, frog marches them into a net. Let's say, I don't know, the player's 13 years old, and they whack it up to 70 miles an hour, completely out of the comfort zone, don't stand the chance, they get hit. I mean, is that too much? Can that have a detrimental effect, taking somebody too much to an extreme?
I think so, and I think that's also sort of slightly abusive. I think it needs to be collaborative. I think you need high support, high challenge. We've talked about before in a coaching environment. So the child has to be really on board with it. I have heard situations where the coach just kind of does it, which obviously, is not. I think it needs to be collaborative. You need to pick the moments, and if that's what the child says, look, I really want to get better. Come on, I can do this, and puts on a chest guard and all of the stuff and says, let's do it. I think that's fine, but because as you said as well, like, it's meant to be fun. And we've talked about maybe more sort of softer ways of building up that resilience, maybe having people bowl with an incredible ball instead of a hard ball and stuff like that. I think that might be a kind of more soft way of doing it, because there's no need to, they don't need to be the finished product immediately. Like, it's kind of supposed to be a process.
Definitely. And you've got my take on it is that you have to have the skill in place to be able to meet the demand.
Yes.
So the story that I used to, it's a story from a long time ago, from the 90s actually. So at Old Trafford Cricket Ground in those days, we used to have a gym. Well, they obviously still do have a gym, but it was in a different place. It was in the indoor centre. And at that time, Sale Sharks, the rugby club, were changing their ground. They were having some kind of refurbishment, which meant that they were training at Old Trafford. And they were using the gym. So we'd kind of, they'd use a gym first thing in the morning. We'd follow them and look at these massive weights that they're lifting. But as a result of that, there was a couple of times where we said, come on, we'll get you into the nets.
Oh, yeah.
And these big burly rugby players, they got all padded up, and we put them on a machine. They'd never played the game before, but rugby players are tough, aren't they? And we cracked it up, and they started getting hit, and they were scared.
Yeah.
They were definitely apprehensive because they didn't have the skill level to meet the demand.
Yeah.
And what it kind of taught me was, actually, that's so important that it's all right, kind of, ramping it up to a certain point. But if you are completely swamped and you don't have the skills in place to meet that demand, then actually I'm not sure what good it did, because they got no learning out of it. All they learned was a cricket ball hurts when it hits you.
Yeah.
And they didn't have any kind of coping mechanism. So on that point about the Incredibles, actually, I think that's a really useful kind of area for people to explore, that, you know, a lot of it is, first of all, have you got the skill of being able to, you know, play against a fast moving ball?
And this is the thing, we see people starting hardball earlier and earlier, and they bypass the fundamental technical skills that they need to be able to play it. If they can't even hold the bat properly and have a good setup, how on earth are they going to be able to, like, when it's a wind ball and a plastic bat that weighs nothing and they're tiny? How can you suddenly then expect them to be able to hit a hard ball? And I think there's almost become a bit of a, I don't know if it's because the counties are starting hardball earlier or because of the way the leagues are structured, but it's they're starting so young, like 7 and 8. And you just think, really, are the skills there, or are we rushing the process?
Do you know, I've realised that I didn't start the stopwatch. So listeners, you know, the first episode I put a stopwatch on. I've not done that, so I've no idea how long we've been going. But looking at the time, I think we need to kind of start bringing it to a close. From your perspective, Brian, have we covered resilience there? Is there any kind of area that we need to touch on?
Yeah, I think we have. I think what's really key to remember is resilience is like a fundamental life skill, and it allows us to separate the things that happen from who we are, and so it allows us to kind of bend instead of break when these difficult things happen. It's so important, and your environment around you and how people respond to that, and hopefully some of our listeners are coaches or parents, how you respond to that expression of emotion is so important in supporting that young or old player to develop the resilience that they need.
So in a nutshell, resilience isn't how strong or tough you are. It's about how well you recover from mistakes and disappointment.
And process emotions,
So feeling it, dealing with it, staying in the game. Is that fair?
100%, yeah. Sounds simple, doesn't it?
Yeah, easier said than done.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I think that's a good place to wrap things up.
Yeah.
But before we go, we've had an idea for a topic to explore in a future episode, and it comes from John Neal, the chap I mentioned earlier in the show, and he actually, bizarrely or not, he heads up coach development at Welsh Rugby now.
How interesting!
Yeah, it's a bit, isn't it? Anyway, he'd like to discuss, or us to discuss, the differences between personality and character,
okay.
and how these kind of play out in cricket, whether you play a coach or a leader within the game. So do you fancy exploring that?
I think that sounds a great topic. Yeah.
Maybe we can get him on
and
just let him go. He can, he can talk for hours, couldn't you? I hope he's not listening. All right. Well, we'll do that.
Perfect.
So, on that, listeners, please do send in any suggested topics of your own, actually, that you'd like us to discuss in future episodes, as well as any questions that you'd like us to answer. So I think we'll call that a day. What did I say last time? Shall we call it stumps? Shall we stick with that, Bryony?
Yeah.
So that's stumps, everybody.
Yeah. See you next time.